In this edition of File on 4, Jenny Cuff asks how much we know about the British jihadists who go to fight in Syria.
It's going to be flying over, duck down. It's too high, it's going over the mountain.
Too high.
These men have left their homes in the UK for life on the front line of Syria's civil war.
All here fighting for one cause, to bring back an Islamic state, to bring back the Sharia of Allah and for the Muslims to live in peace.
The Home Secretary and MI5 have warned about the terrorist threat from British residents now fighting in Syria, but you rarely hear from the men themselves. In tonight's File on 4, we get an insight into who they are and why they're taking part in another country's war. It's not so much what these men are doing now that causes alarm, but what they might do in the future.
When they come back, this country has to face the music.
MI5 says there could be as many as 200 UK fighters in Syria. But who are they? We want to track down some of the individuals behind the statistics. The appeal of fighting in Syria goes wider than the Syrian community. Jihadist groups have refined the art of propaganda, making full use of the internet and social media sites to win recruits and funds from across the world. These messages are particularly persuasive for young British nationals from poorer backgrounds who feel disempowered. There's one community that knows this only too well. Sudanese refugees in Britain, many of whom ironically fled from an extremist Islamic state, have already seen young men leaving to fight with Al-Shabaab in Somalia. Now, according to Salah Al-Bander, who runs the Sudanese Diaspora and Islamism project, about 20 and maybe more have gone to fight in Syria.
Most of the families, especially within our Sudanese community, they tend to refute the fact that their kids joined a jihadist group because, first of all, they don't want really to face any reprisals here, or at the same time, they want to protect their interest in this country and in the Sudan itself. So they would pretend that they went back to Sudan or they went to join their siblings somewhere in the Middle East or that kind of stuff. But from our community intelligence network, we managed to interview so many families.
And have you met any in person who've gone to fight in Syria?
I met some of them. In fact, I met some of them before they left. I wasn't really in any contact with them since they left this country. But I know their families, I know their backgrounds. Most of them is between 22 to 30 years old. So they are very young. They are very aggressive in terms of their ideals. Not one of them coming from any privileged background. Not one of them.
We've spoken to the father of one of these men who confirms that he's gone to Syria but doesn't want to talk about it. Salah Al-Bander says that the extremists recruit these young men through prayer rooms attached to mosques. He calls them incubators, and then arrange their travel to Syria.
These kids are living within a deprived background. They are living in communities who are ridden by unemployment. They find these small isolated mosques, these small offshoot mosques, where they can feel a sense of belongingness. And from my experience, it is most unlikely for these kids just to go to the back streets of Istanbul or Ankara or Jordan or whatever, knocking on doors, asking about the headquarters or the address of the Jihad or the Nusra or Liwa al-Islam. No, these kids, they don't have access even to buy a ticket. There is a kind of railroad between British cities or Western cities and linking points in Jordan, Lebanon and Turkey to bring these individuals inside Syria. This is the network of people who is initiating the contacts here, and there is definitely people who is in the receiving end there, coordinating all these efforts. Some of them there in these refugees camps or displaced people camps, they are there specifically to meet volunteers who's coming from not only Western Europe, but from the Middle East itself.
Their annual report to Parliament, the Intelligence and Security Committee described the involvement of UK residents in Syria as posing a significant threat for years to come. But their chairman, Sir Malcolm Rifkind, acknowledges that fighters may have different reasons for going, and not everyone who returns will be radicalised.
Some who might take part in these terrorist acts in Syria may be so sickened by what they themselves have been involved in or what they have seen that they resolve never to do that again. You know, there will be others who have gone purely because of strong feelings about Syria and may not feel the same extreme views in regard to other countries, including the United Kingdom. But we must assume that from amongst the total there will be some who do return, either to continue what they were doing or trying to do in Britain before they ever went to Syria, or seeking to use the experience they have obtained in Syria for further acts of terrorism in this country. That must be a possibility. Let's not be under any illusions. A very small number of people can create a massive national or international problem. They are a terrible threat.
For British security officials, trying to stem the flow of jihadists from Britain and monitoring them on their return poses a major challenge.
That edition of File on 4 was presented by Jenny Cuff, and the producer was Paul Grant.